being recorded. I don't know why people wouldn't be. Yeah, I'm on the wrong one. Wouldn't that be funny? Oh, Vish, I'm happy to see you here. I was starting to think I was on the wrong Zoom.
You are never on the wrong Zoom, Chris. Come on.
It happens, you know.
How come you didn't come for the pitch deck thing?
Um, I
Come on, don't give me
have a
any.
very, very challenging job that pays me money. So the priorities kind of shift according to where we are in the year. It's our end of our second quarter this
Ah,
week, and it is crazy.
come on, people are
I
trying to find new jobs, so you have to stick with what you have.
know. I appreciate that. But I think you were in well off hands with everybody that was
Oh yeah, of course, of
involved.
course.
So, Christina, good to see you this morning, this evening for you.
Yeah, good to see you all too.
Yeah. Um, we'll get going here soon. Valerie, good evening, good afternoon to you.
Good evening. Hi,
Yeah.
everybody.
Normally we don't record, or try not to, just to keep it like a safe space and everything, so people can talk. But with having a little bit of a guest speaker today, we thought we'd just go ahead and keep the recording going. Because there are some folks that have said, "Oh, can we get this afterwards? Or traveling or something." So,
Right.
it's 2 minutes after. Let's just give it a little bit of time. Tom, aren't you going on vacation here soon? Or are you on vacation right now? You might be.
Hey guys. Hey Chris, sorry for joining late.
No worries. We're just kind of like giving everybody a little bit of time. It's only 2 after. And we'll get going here.
Dirk, we're waiting for you to join. You're the guest of honor today.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's kick off things. For this session this week, we wanted to kind of frame up the agenda for the time together with just kind of like let's reflect and let's just have a conversation and get everybody's thoughts about the first pitch, and share kind of anything you want to share about the challenge of doing it, what you learned through the lesson, what you do differently next time, which will be coming up in a couple weeks. So we'll go through kind of open forum conversation about that. And then I would love to introduce Christina Yeager, who's founder of House of Delphi, as our guest speaker today. And Christina, I'm not going to do you justice here on the introduction, but maybe before you present, you can introduce yourself as well. But Christina is a writer, a storyteller, a talent manager. She's a former LEAD alumni, and she is going to share her knowledge about working with startups and around founder leadership and organizational design, and probably anything else you might want to talk about. So really looking forward to that presentation and the following conversation after that. All right. So, who wants to begin? Who wants to start? Share your experience or I guess your experience of doing the pitch and what you learned, what you would do differently. We're gonna have to start calling on people.
I can go first. Sorry, I can't be on camera. I'm still sipping my coffee.
Yeah, no. I know it's early, and thank you for stepping up. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I think looking back on my first pitch, 2 minutes felt like a blink. Um, I think I spent a few more seconds than I planned on my story, but it left me rushing through the what and um, why now. And I felt it was really hard to convey the depth of the problem, what the product is solving, and the pain points in that short window of time. So I think that may have um, failed to convey to the judges what I was actually trying to solve for and what I was trying to build. So yeah, but I guess if the point of the first pitch is to grab the attention of the judges, and that gets you to the next conversation, um, I think it was a good experience.
Chris, you're in mute.
I sure am. Thank you for sharing. It is a daunting experience, and like we've said before, it only gets better, and your messaging gets so much more fine-tuned as we keep going here.
Mm, thank you.
It is a lot to cram in there for certain. I was not able to participate, just with other work things going on. Anybody just kind of get through like only half of their pitch? Guess not everybody at least got pretty close to the end or so in the 2 minutes. That's a great accomplishment then. Any technology problems, that's always in the way, no matter what you're doing, whether it's a 2-minute time pitch or a 2-hour presentation.
I think there were a couple of teams that had some tech problems, but they winged it. I think the overall flow of it went really well. I was a little sad that in the end I was left with only 2 judges. Couldn't get all 3 to comment, but we had post sessions with our mentor and DT strategists, and they provided a lot of great help and feedback both before the presentation and after. But yeah, 2 minutes was a very short time, so it was just trying to prioritize what we wanted to share, and preparing and presenting that 2 minutes really took a lot of time. So I thought about like Steve Jobs and how he does all those in-person presentations. He does a lot of pre-work, which is what I was trying to do. Yeah, but then the next presentation, Pitch Day 2, is coming up really soon. So the pressure is on all of us.
Yeah. Glenn, thank you for sharing. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The preparation for a 2-minute pitch is like outstandingly crazy, time-wise. Yeah, but that's where the money's made. 2 minutes is really unfair, isn't it? But sometimes that's all you get in an elevator ride, like an elevator pitch, right? So
Yeah, I think 2 minutes is just enough to tell your story, to
yeah,
get their attention. But anything more than that, getting into the why, the how, the product, the pain points, it needs more than that.
yeah,
But being at the session and seeing all presentation, I have to say we have a huge step up front because everybody did a great job for the first pitch. It was amazing. We saw different things, Chris, for
yes.
sure. It was really great.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah,
Dirk, you had your hand up.
Oh.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. If someone else
No,
had
no,
their hand
yeah,
up,
I
I
wanted.
didn't.
Sorry for that. I was slow with unmuting myself, and I have a little bit of time lag. Sorry if I disrupted somebody, but I wanted to echo Valerie what you observed more from the sideline, right? I was not presenting, but I saw everybody presenting, and maybe Maurizio, you are already a mentor for more decades, right? And you have a better comparison population. But I thought for the first pitch, across all of the ones which did their 2 minutes, you saw that they were really well prepared. I think the documentation, the kind of slides were much more thought through than I had it seen beforehand. So they were really, yeah, you saw the preparation and how well everybody was prepared. And there's a lot to learn also from the others in this way. So it's a very strong cohort from my perspective, at least compared to my reference point. So this is the only observation I wanted to share. So continue like that. As the full cohort, that's really amazing that the work you're doing here.
I'll just share for us. I was practicing with my wife, son, and a few other close friends, and they would keep giving me feedback. For me and my co-founder, it was like, how do you reduce every word? And I knew I was speaking fast. I wasn't very happy that the speed it was, because 2 minutes is, and for 6 slides, you're getting 20 seconds. So it was a challenge, but also a very, what should I say, transformative for us, that we, typically we are all techies in my team, so we're not necessarily have brevity on our side. So it's we are also learning is, hey, maybe at some point, if we are close to getting funded, we'll need a salesperson.
Yeah, and for us, beyond the learnings of the feedback from our own pitch, I was learning just as much from the feedback of everyone else's pitches and what was uh getting through and what wasn't getting through. Because at the end of the day, for me, one of the pieces of feedback that we got was that, it sounds like you guys are making some hardware, so you're going to need manufacturing and all that, which is not at all like we're asking users to bring hardware onto our platform. We're not building hardware at all. And so that was a failure in communication on our part, that we didn't make it super clear of what the actual product is doing. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of opportunity. I mean, I think when I look back on it, it was that we made assumptions that the audience may know something, when in reality the three judges are complete strangers to every project. And so they're a really good litmus test on how well we're communicating our project.
I'm muted again. Good reflection, Chris. Thanks for sharing. I was just kind of like just talking about it with everybody and just kind of getting their viewpoints. Is that helpful at all? Their viewpoints or their reflection on how they did, I guess, is what I'm asking. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Quiet group this morning.
Yeah, I think we did all right.
Yeah.
Always room for improvement.
No. I meant like in this session, just kind of everybody sharing their reflection. Is that helpful to everyone?
Yeah, it is to me.
Yeah.
Uh,
We're in it together. It's a team effort.
me too. Yes.
Yeah. Good. Well, Christina, do you want to introduce yourself and take it away? Take the show away from here.
Yeah, absolutely. You did a fantastic job introducing me already, so I have nothing else to say now.
You're very, very kind. Unfortunately, I have to actually step away. I'm going to try to come back, but I have to step away for a little bit. But you're in very good hands, and the session is being recorded.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Appreciate the introduction. Have fun, whatever you're doing. And I'm glad I'm in good hands.
A forecast update. That's always fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
At the end of the
absolutely.
quarter. Wish me luck. Bye.
Good luck. Bye. Awesome. Well, I think I guess, in charge now. I'm Christina. Like Chris said, I am the founder of House of Delphi. I am a lead alum. I'm very excited to be here chatting with you all today. And congratulations on your first pitch. That's huge. I'm sure you're all relieved, but also gearing up for the next one. I actually had one question before I got going with my presentation, and that was, were you all able to see each other's pitches? Like, were they all recorded, and could you all review each other's pitches?
Yeah, we're all listening into each other's pitches and also the feedback.
Yeah, they were in
Okay.
succession in the same session.
Ah, okay. Okay, very nice. And was there any sort of, is this the only time you were able to discuss how you felt about your pitches, ideas, feedback, or did you all give each other feedback? Did any of that happen? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, as a team, I think this was the very first time. Although when you ask a question, I feel like as a team, as a cohort, we could be meeting more often and
Mhm.
practicing our pitches and prepping better.
Yeah, yeah. That's very good feedback. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. My presentation, like Chris said, I'm a leadership consultant and coach. I also have a little bit of a different angle. I'm a little unconventional when it comes to the way that I consult with leadership. And I curated my presentation to be a little bit more pitch oriented as well. So hopefully some of this can help with just kind of giving a little bit of a different perspective. Hopefully it's not too like esoteric, but let me go ahead and get into it. And of course, this is meant to be interactive. So feel free to jump in, let me know if you have any questions, and we'll get going. Okay. All right, can everybody see my screen okay? Yeah, okay. All right, so what I'd like to talk about today is architecting your startup thinking beyond the pitch. So kind of the idea behind this is using your pitch as a jumping off point to the entire architecture of your organization. So in the work that I've done, I have had 15 years of being an executive leader, being head of people, of talent, leadership consulting, leadership coaching, driving success in executive teams and teams across startups. I've worked within startups and also consulting with startups. And one thing that I love, and I've noticed, I love early stage founders. I love emerging leaders. And one thing that I've found as startups scale and as founders kind of get started with their product, even at the very early stages you are, is there is, as you progress through the different stages of development and pitching and investment and then post-investment, it tends to be a mountain to climb each time that are all dispersed. And one concept that I use with my leadership coaching is to really look at the very beginning, even from the pitch, as a way to bring all those mountains together so that when you do have to scale the mountain, they're closer together and the delta in between isn't as great because you've done the work from the very, very beginning. So the way that I do this is this framework. So I have a 3 identities framework that I use, and some of this may seem like it's kind of common knowledge, but it's my own framework that I have really developed from a place of just working with founders who have dive right into the product because that's what you're excited about. But going from a more intentional standpoint at the very beginning can be incredibly helpful. So the 3 identities here that we work through is, of course, the first identity is your founder identity. And this is not necessarily your leadership identity. It can transform into your leadership identity, but it really starts as just as your founder identity. And this flows through everything else. It cascades through everything else that you do. And so it's the DNA. It comes from your superpowers, your values, your unique way of seeing the world, and your own internal compass. Then that flows into your product identity. And where this can really help with your pitch as well, there were a few of you earlier that said that you had a hard time getting through your story and then also discussing the different, the why now, and what problem you're trying to solve. One thing with a really strong product identity is you can develop a story that permeates, that isn't just a separate story that you tell, but a story that is infused into each layer. So it's infused into the why now, and it almost reads like a story. So you don't actually even have to tell that separate story in your elevator pitch. You can talk about the why now and the what and what problem it's solving through the lens of a story. So that could also be helpful with a very limited amount of time when you do pitch, instead of telling the story separate from some of the other key points you need to hit. And then the last but not least is your organizational identity, which that is obviously going to happen later on after an injection of investment, and you start to build your team, your organization, your business. But if you create that blueprint and seed those seeds of DNA at the very beginning, even through something like a pitch, that sometimes people think they only do during a fundraise. If you can actually use your pitch as the blueprint for your organization as you eventually fundraise and grow. I'm going to stop there. I feel like I've been talking already for a little bit of time. Does anybody have any questions or feedback or thoughts around that so far? Okay, moving on. I'm going to take a sip of water. So to get into this a bit, as a founder, you are the blueprint. Your ethos is going to shape the product, and you already know this. But with shaping the product, I'll go back. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The founder identity is really your curated expression of how you want to show up, the leader eventually that you'll be to both to your organization, but also the leader that you are to your product. And it's you're going to be the architect of your business. So really identifying that founder identity at the very beginning will help when the cascade and the each mountain comes into play and you have to scale in each mountain. It's going to help with the underpinning as you move into each phase. So when we see like unconscious identities in founders, a lot of times accidental systems come into play, unclear decision making happens, and even when you're in the middle of pitching to investors, a lot of times they will ask you, why did you make such and such decision? And of course, you can use, the data that you have and the background around it. But if there isn't a clear through point around your decision making that ties back to this founder identity story, things will still feel disjointed, even with all the data in the world. That through line is super important in your decision making process and the way you communicate your story as well. And then when you have your intentional identity, and again, the application of this is something I do with my coaching clients. and developing the identity. But when you actually do establish that intentional identity, you have naturally outpourings of coherent foundations that are scalable with congruent patterns that are underneath the surface, but are very you can perceive them quite easily through pattern recognition without having to be very overt with telling a particular story. Again, you don't need a 10-page manifesto. You don't have to write a whole like life narrative, but you do need a starting point for this. So some questions to reflect on, and I'm going to go through them, but if anybody would like to answer one or two of them, I'd love that. But who are you becoming as a leader? How are you even self-leading at this point in time? And I'm sure you've heard your vision and values being encouraged, and I'm sure you're in the process of building. But what are you building and why now? Of course, but from the perspective of being a founder and your identity, and then your values. What must remain true to you as you build this product? Again, it's not about jazz for investors. It's really about laying that blueprint for every decision you make moving forward. And investors do like it, of course. So, anyone want to speak to any of the who, the vision, the why now, values, questions?
I could take a stab at it.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca.
No, you're welcome. I mean, I think more from the vision point of view. So my business is helping artists and freelance creators with their sort of business acumen and helping them become self-sustainable. So the why now is that A, it doesn't exist, but B, we're coming at a real exciting intersection where AI is having a huge role. And the initial sort of perception of AI for artists was really negative because it was like more about stealing work. So I feel like we're at a really critical point where we can kind of change that perception. And if we can adopt artists to actually work with AI, then this would be like a really exciting time. So that would be my why.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a fantastic why. And that's actually, it was a point that I was going to make. It was something very similar, but you just reminded me of it. So thank you. Because you are exactly right. Like, especially in a world of AI, pitch decks, one pagers, anything that investors are seeing these days, it's far more polished than we were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? Because everybody's using AI. So how are you going to stand out in a world of beautiful AI polish and data and graphs? And it's exactly the intersection of bringing in your artistry, your humanness, your storytelling, and allowing that through line. You can leverage AI, of course, but allowing your humanness and using these identities to be that through line, so that AI can learn from that and then use that as the underpinning for what it creates for you, whether it's a pitch deck or marketing materials or whatever. And that is it's so interesting because it's so perceived by humans in a way that it goes through our subconscious, right? It doesn't even hit our conscious mind. And so I think one other thing that I was going to say about this is like the creativity, the creativity out there. If you're looking at like blog posts or AI generated anything, it seems like, I think initially we thought, oh, this is incredible. Like, this is something I've never seen before. But then over time, even just within the past 2 or 3 years, and this is, I think, going to continue, it starts to, like, you start to understand that there isn't like a human essence that's pushing it forward. And you look, for me, it's like I get on LinkedIn and I look at all the articles and blog posts and I'm like, these sound all exactly the same. Even if you can tell people tried to like edit, there's no human essence really that comes out in it. So part of this is understanding each of these different identities and really developing them and curating them in such a way where you can leverage AI and then train AI on this identity so that everything that you do has this very authentic through line. So yeah, thanks, Rebecca. Very like so applicable. I love it.
And I think that's also like a unintended consequence of people using AI or AI even existing is that it like heightens our, you know, skeptical nature of the posts that we're seeing, because some of those posts, I mean, they may be handwritten, you know, they may be completely written by a human, but it's just the fact that people have the ability to do this thing that others may look at it and be like, oh, that was written by AI, even if it
Yeah,
wasn't, you know. So
so true.
that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And the more that I think of obviously AI is going to advance. We all know that, and it probably will get to a point where it can really learn your tone in such a way that it sounds even, you know, it sounds very authentic. However, there's still like that underpinning of identity that AI is not going to know unless you are very clear about it. So I think it's an interesting. I created a post the other day about how I really see AI as this basically like species that is it has its own intelligence, right? And if we learn how to co-collaborate in such a beautiful way, there's like the options are very endless because humans still do things very well, and I think we'll always do things certain things very well as humans, and then AI will also do things extremely well as AI, right? And so the more we learn how to coexist and cohabitate these spaces, the better off we're going to be. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to go and add one thing that AI probably is not going to tell yet, and I could be off, is everybody has a journey, at least me and my co-founders do. There's a lot of heartache we have had, and there were lessons. And the reason we are here today is I'll try to sum it in less than 120 seconds is in the world, every company wants to claim, hey, their operations are data driven. They are, but very fragmented and not to a point where they really want it to be. So that's what has driven me and my founders to say, hey, if there's a pyramid, we are not even at the middle of data driving things. How do we get there? So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that actually ties in really well with the organizational identity that I'll get into in a little bit. I'm not going to get into that as robustly just because it is a little bit further down the line, but organizational identity is so important in combining both the data-driven decisions, the metrics, but also with the humanness that needs to be also infused throughout the organization. And that identity that is cannot be explained by metrics, right? Like they are two different things, but they can work together very well. Yeah, awesome. Anything else? Any other comments or thoughts?
Christina, this might be kind of very provocative, but I was listening to a podcast actually recorded by Stanford, Arvind Srinivas, the Perplexity CEO, and he was like, with all the advent of AI and everything, AI generated decks, he said, pitch decks are dead. I would just record the demo and send it, right?
Yeah. It's so true. Actually, I have a good friend. Has anybody listened to, it's a podcast and a YouTube channel. It's called Drinks with a VC. Has anybody heard of that? Okay, well, oh, you have. Okay, awesome. One of my good friends is the co-host, Bree Hansen, and I think it was the most recent interview that she was doing with one of the VCs, and he said something like super similar. He was like, hell, like let's just go back to one pagers. Like this is this is like getting crazy with all the AI enhanced pitch decks. He's like, just make me a one pager at this point. So I think that is like a very interesting twist. And also like the more it also kind of indicates, in my opinion, the more human you can make something, the more the VCs are going to start listening. So I think that's kind of an interesting evolution of this is maybe having a typo might actually help you instead of hurt you these days, right? Yeah, thank you for sharing. All right, so kind of getting into the product identity. Your product identity is a natural outflow of your founder identity. Once you have a very strong founder identity, your product identity is going to come into clarity, I think, a lot easier. And product identity is definitely more than just like a product market fit or what it does or the feature list. But and I'm sure you've heard some of this before, but it's the product story is what is presented. That's the external communication around the product identity. And so where this comes from is a clear product arc, what it stands for, who it's for, and what it rejects. I think that's also pretty important. What it is not going to address. A compelling story, again, this is the external communication of this product identity. And then your unique lens, right? It's like your value proposition, but even more than your value proposition, it's why is this this product uniquely part of you as well, right? Like how have you as a founder and your story and your identity impacted the unique lens that this product is coming to life through? And so some questions around this, and this is I'm going to butcher this word, but amphormanthizing. I have a hard time saying that word, but it's basically like taking on the personification of a human, right? So what does this product believe? Like, is there a belief system within this product? And there should be as part of the product identity. Who is it for and what does it reject, right? And then of course the why now, and then why you? Why has this been really birthed by you? And why are you the person that is right to develop this product? Why are you the one that is the best person to found this company and develop this product? So I'm big on soul and humanness, as you can tell. So the product needs a soul, not just a spec sheet. The spec sheet, of course, is important, but the soul behind it is really what's going to create that story. And at the end of the day, I think we know this. Humans, a lot of times, most of the time, they buy the ethos of the product, not necessarily the product itself, especially as there's a more saturated market. Any questions or thoughts or pushback on product identity?
No, I think a great example of how like it makes me think of how Shark Tank pitches like really over index for, the person that's presenting it. I mean, there's always like some tearjerker story associated with like why the product was created. And I'm not saying that like that's the full direction you're suggesting here, but if anyone wants a really good example of just watch 5 Shark Tank pitches, and you'll really see how they focus in on that human story.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too because I think there's, of course, a time and place for the human story, but also like the product identity is separate, right, from the founder identity. And so your product identity, it has a story, but the story is uniquely around the product. So for instance, your founder identity is going to influence the decision-making process that then creates your product identity. So it's not directly the story that creates the product identity. The story is the external communication of the why. But I think it's like, for instance, one thing that came to mind is I have a friend who started at Facebook when it was still Facebook, and then it went through the rebranding with Meta. And like that was such a hard transition because it had such a strong brand. And not just brand, but like product identity. Like the product identity was super, super strong with Facebook. And then the whole rebrand, it took, I think billions of dollars, a very long time. And even my friend who works there now, and it's been Meta for a very long time, he even is like, oh, Facebook, oh, I mean Meta, right? So having that brand or having that product identity from the very beginning and really knowing why your product has this identity and the decisions that are made in order to support that identity is super important in not only telling the story, but also with the product roadmap down the road. Like the decisions that you're making as you develop your product roadmap can tie back to this product identity that is still very different from your founder identity, although informed by your founder identity. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Christina,
Ideas.
sorry, please go ahead.
one thing. Yeah. So I wonder if the product identity is not just shaped by what a company builds, but by who it serves and who are the personas and how does it support them. And I feel like to build something truly impactful, you have to listen across the entire value chain where your product plays, not just the specific persona you are focusing on, but who are the influencer personas, the impacted personas, and the buyer persona to make that story more compelling for that entire value chain. And maybe this is something you'll cover in organizational identity, but.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think also that kind of goes back to the idea of what does it stand for and what does it reject? So then going through your customer personas and going through your ideal customer, if they're asked, like I believe I was on a call a couple weeks ago with everybody, and there was a little bit of a conversation around, well, if we're doing you're interviewing potential, like I think it was like some use case interviews. And so there was somebody that said, well, if somebody is really wanting one feature for the product, but it doesn't seem to really, it's not feeling like it's aligned with the direction that I want this to go in, do I still need to really take that feedback into consideration? Like, how do I manage that? Even if a lot of people are saying that, how do I manage that? So exactly to that point with in developing your product identity, it's a lot about creating a clear framework around how you make those types of decisions when your customer is asking for something, but you're not really certain if that is how you want to actually design the product without alienating huge groups of potential customers, of course. But yeah, well said. Thank you. And I am unfortunately probably going to butcher your name. Kushal, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Christina. You did not butcher it at all. So
Awesome.
don't worry. This has been a fascinating conversation. I am a little confused or unclear on what product identity means. So if you could perhaps shed any light on it, that would be great. It sounds to me like product identity could be subjective, and it's not something we overtly communicate. That's why I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I actually like in going through this, I even like when I was writing my notes, I said, I can see where all of these identities can kind of blend and morph together and not look very clear separately, because they are very connected from your founder identity, product identity, and organizational identity. The one thing I will say is the way that this is all designed is through the lens of like the founder blueprint, right? So it's through more of like a leadership founder identity blueprint that then cascades through your product and then into your organization. And when we'll talk a little bit about the organizational identity as well. Basically, this the product identity, I will separate it out a little bit from product marketing and product, going into like those aspects of product. The product identity, for the sake of this presentation and the work that I do, is much more through the lens of connecting your product with both your founder identity and your leadership identity and the resulting organizational, operational identity and design. So there's a little bit of a like lens differentiation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you. Are you saying, like, would this come into play in sort of forming a central identity or axis of decision making for the company?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So it's all about a lot of it is about decision making and making sure that the decisions you're making for your product in service of your product, it's a cohesive through line between your founder identity, the product identity, and then the organizational identity as well. So instead of making decisions in echo chambers or silos within what your entire organization, making sure that there's a line that goes through all of this in the decision-making process that you have to do every single day, right?
Yeah. Helps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. I really appreciate that. And Glenn, looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Thanks for sharing. Quick comment and question as well. So I think from your previous slide and this slide, I see what you're sharing. A lot of concepts here, so it's great. And I think for most of us as founders of startups, it's not about the products that we're selling, but rather the story, because there could be a ton of competitors out there trying to deliver a similar type product. So what story are we actually trying to tell, and the stories actually sell? So they know us as founders. Our DNA shines all the way through to the products that we're building, to the organizations that we built, and ultimately, if they make a deal with us, they are buying our story rather than the product, and they're hoping that the product delivers. Right? Usually that's the case. But I think Chris also mentioned Shark Tank, and I think Shark Tank, it's a whole different ball game, right? There's probably the good where they hear your story, they're like, oh yeah, that's great, right? But then they're looking for the product, they're looking for financials. Have you, what's your sales? How much have you generated, and things like that. And that separates the good from the great. I think we are very early in our journey for most of us. So we need to share that story. So thanks for sharing that. I just wanted to ask a quick question on this first bullet point. Clear product art, what it stands for, who's it for, and what it rejects. Do you have an example of a very good product that has a very clear proposition, what it stands for, who it's for, what it rejects, so that we can better understand the concepts that you're sharing? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking of examples earlier and then got pulled down a different rabbit hole, unfortunately. So I didn't have one off the top of I didn't have one prepared, but I think this is a good question. I think what I could do here is maybe pull in a couple different organizations and give examples for what it stands for, who it's for, and what it rejects. So, well, I guess for what it rejects, to kind of start with that one, I have. And this is a service-based industry, so it's a little bit different than a tech project, but I have a friend who runs an Enneagram consulting business, and I also am Enneagram certified. Do you all know what Enneagram is? Basically it's like a personality typology, but it's a little bit more than just personality. It talks about like key motivators and key fears, and it can be used a lot in the workplace and hiring in creating more effective teams, et cetera. So I have a colleague and a friend who runs her own Enneagram consulting firm. And one thing that she rejects is basically anyone who, it's not anyone who's skeptical, but anyone who like comes to her saying, well, I don't know if this is going to work, but I guess I'll give it a shot, right? And so kind of with that mentality, it's almost like it's setting her up for failure almost sometimes. And so if you aren't in certain situations, if somebody isn't bought into the product, if there's not not a healthy sense of curiosity and a healthy sense of skepticism, then you can have the not ethos, not can't find the right word, but you can have the line in the sand saying this is not the type of customer we want, and this is not a product that is for this type of mentality, and so that's part of the ethos of the product as well. Is like, what is it going to what is it not going to serve, and who will it not serve? Because it won't serve everybody. It won't be for everybody. So getting clear also on who is not, um, who's not a good fit for this product is also, I think, just as important as who are the really good fits. So that's kind of an example of for Jackson. And then I think for like who it's for, it can be pretty straightforward for a lot of different companies. And then what it stands for at the end of the day, your product identity is definitely getting tied back to your founder identity. So what do you stand for as a founder? How is that infused into your product? And then a product, like I will say, like, I think we always go kind of back to Steve Jobs. I think that's kind of a very ubiquitous, but also very good example is Steve Jobs stood for a lot of different things, and you can see how his identity was really infused into the product identity and how that identity was very, very communicated extremely well, not just by Steve Jobs, but by the product itself, and what it stood for, and what it rejected too, right? Definitely rejected a lot of Windows users, right? So that maybe that's not those aren't the best examples, but it kind of gives you a little bit of tangible feeling around like those three parts of the story or the product arc. Hopefully
Thanks,
that's
Christina.
helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the question. Awesome. All right, we're gonna hop over really quick to organizational identity, and this is the one that probably isn't super applicable right now at your stage, just because you're in the process of creating an organization, getting that investment and funding so that you can begin to build your business and hiring and all of that. However, I am very passionate about the organizational identity piece because, like I said earlier, from the founder identity to the product identity, and then through pitch and investment and fundraise, the organizational identity comes real quick, right? Like you get that injection of money and you start hiring and you start building processes and systems, and you're a full-blown business that's like working through a ton of chaos. And so a part of this is part of this whole process is at the very outset, you know, building things like your pitch as a blueprint, right? Like working through some of these more esoteric uh, things that maybe a lot of founders don't do at the very beginning. Taking that time to do that work leads very naturally into having that organizational identity already very well congealed once you get that injection of money and you start to explode, right? So basically, yeah, so build when you get to this point, your early choices are going to be reflected here. And I think one thing that we probably all have experience with is being at organizations where, like, everybody loves like KPIs and OKRs, right? But like, what is the why behind that? Like, sure, everybody's doing it. Yeah, it's a good best practice and business model for goal setting, right? But at the end of the day, we still need to communicate that and have a reason why within our kind of company, not just, oh, well, everybody else does it and it's a good model, but like, why does this work for you? Why does this work for your organization? How is this part of our identity? And I always say, like, let's get curious and creative with this. Like, how can we switch the script a little bit? Like, instead of calling it a KPI, maybe our organization and like the identity of our product can inform the type of language we use for setting goals, right? So like really incorporating the two identities that you work so hard to build leading up to your organizational identity can really be informative as you start to build your organization from the ground up. And you don't have to do things in a very cookie cutter way. You can do things completely differently, taking best practices and cherry picking what's going to work best, reflecting on your product and your founder identity as well. I'm saying identity a lot. I apologize. So I think also and I hate the term culture. I think it's very overused and and a lot of times has connotations that aren't the best. But for the sake of this slide, culture drift definitely begins with these types of shallow decisions where there's not a clear why communicated. And then also a lot of times the organizational strategy and the strategy of the business gets very confusing when every other startups are chaotic, right? Every other day there's going to be a process change, there's going to be a system change, there's something's going to happen, a fire. And so if there's no clear identity behind all these changes that are happening so quickly, and the understanding that there's a strategy alongside this identity, and that's why we're having all of these rapid fire changes, and each change is happening because it's tied back to a core belief, then the burnout isn't going to happen as quickly, because we all know like startups and burnout are almost synonymous, right? Yeah, identity-led systems, they're the ones that create the most coherence, and we all know that beer on tap is not culture, and there's a lot more to it. I'll pause and see if
Christina, a
anyone.
quick question on this. Does this link very closely to the values that you're developing for the organization? So what I hear often is, it helps in decision making for leaders and, even ground staff, right? Where if they are at a crossroads, they're trying to make a decision, and there could be multiple, ways to solve a problem. They always fall back on what are the values of my organization and how do I align with it, right? So this will shine through and make it more efficient in decision making, and it's more, I think, aligned with what the company's mission and vision is. So is that how you view the organizational identity or DNA, where it comes through the mission, the vision, the values, the founders, actually doing what they are sharing with the entire employee team? Just some quick notes from Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is. And I think a lot of times, you mentioned values, which is like such a central piece to this, but it's not everything. Values are a tool that we can use in our decision-making processes that allow the decision-making to be aligned and cohesive across the organization, especially as you scale. When you get, if you're 5 people, you can very easily make decisions that are all very closely aligned. But when you scale to 100, 200, 1,000 people, you need a tool for people to use, which a lot of times is values, in order to make those decisions in an aligned manner, right? And so values is very essential to this, but also coming from the building blocks that I just went through, there are different pieces of these identities that also can truly inform the organizational design and development, that not only helps with the decision-making process, but helps with enhancements, improvements, and really the organization that you want to be in the world, and again, the story, like the story that you tell your new hires, the story that you tell your candidates, and how you hire, and how you get feedback, how you I mean, even down to like leading meetings, right? All of that ties back to these identity pieces that I've been talking about. So yeah,
Thanks, Christina.
absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. All right, Vish, I believe you have your hand up.
Yeah, one quick question, maybe ignorant question. Does always organizational identity and product identity should match or cohesive, or it can be different?
That's a good question. And I think every organization is of course different. But one thing that I see a lot of times with the founders that I work with, and I know we're getting like right up on time, so I apologize. I'm just gonna walk through the answer really quickly, and then I'll be happy to stay on a little bit longer. But one thing that I see with a lot of the founders that I consult with is they see their product a lot of times as very separate from their internal business operations and organizational design. And I think those two things actually should be very, very, very much aligned, because your internal resources, whether they're people or systems or whatever, they are directly support or indirectly, but they're all in support of this product. And so the way that I kind of see it is, if you don't have a very strong alignment between your organizational identity and your product identity, it's almost like you're an apple tree producing beautiful apples. But if you don't have, and that's your product identity, but if you don't have an organizational identity that understands that it's an apple tree and has all of the systems and operations and design in place in order to support the growth of those apples, if it thinks it's a banana tree, you're not going to get beautiful apples based off of a banana tree identity, right? So your product identity and your organizational identity have to be in very, very close alignment, in order for us, for there not to be like confused apples out there, right? Or confused bananas.
Yeah,
Hopefully that helps.
I've been in Series A, B, C, D funded startups, and it's really obvious when the values and identities that you're talking about are in misalignment with what the product actually does or who it serves. And everyone knows it, but no one talks about it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Chris. That's like the whole reason why I go through this framework with the people I consult with, is because nobody talks about it, but everybody can feel it, right? So I appreciate that reflection. And I know we're a little over time, but just to wrap things up and land this plane a little bit, summary, you're not separate from the thing you're building. You're not just telling a story for your pitch deck, you're literally infusing the DNA into everything that you do moving forward. And then of course, couple reflection questions that I think these are really good. I hate reflection questions a lot of times, but the more I start to journal them, the more I get like clarity. And so these are three that I've used with my clients and with myself, that I love. Take a screenshot if you would like. I also am happy to send this deck to Chris to send to all of you as well. I really appreciate you going 3 minutes over time. Just wanted to see if there's any like follow-up questions or ideas. I'm happy to stay on if you all want to have a little further discussion.
I think it was great. Thank you very much. It was greatly useful, and we really appreciate all your time.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. It's fantastic. I also have a little bit, you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And I have a little bit more content that I'm creating for LinkedIn and my website. So yeah, feel free to stay in touch. It was great to meet all of you, and I might be on a few more calls in the future.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Bye.